When a man misses you, he does not always speak it into the world. The masculine energy, by its nature, often hides its emotions behind silence, behind composure, behind the illusion of control. But silence has its own vibration. It is not empty. It is full of what he cannot express. It carries the weight of his thoughts, the echoes of your laughter, the memory of your presence. Stillness, when he feels it, becomes his teacher. It reveals not only how much he misses you, but how deeply he was attached without even realizing it. There is a kind of quiet that does not come from peace, but from absence. A man who misses you feels that quiet wrapping around him like a fog. He sits in it, perhaps unknowingly, and begins to feel the contrast. The life that moved easily when you were near now feels slower, heavier, quieter. He begins to recognize that your presence was not just a person beside him, but a rhythm that his soul unconsciously followed. When that rhythm disappears, stillness arrives, not as rest, but as realization. Many men are not fluent in emotional language. They are trained to move, to solve, to fix, to act, but missing someone cannot be fixed, and it cannot be reasoned away. It sits within him like a quiet lesson. And so, he begins to face a kind of inner stillness that he once avoided. He feels the weight of what is unsaid, what is undone, what was left unappreciated. The more he sits in this space, the more he begins to understand that missing you is not just about wanting you back. It is about meeting himself. Stripped of distraction, stripped of pride, stillness becomes a mirror. In that mirror, he sees himself not as the strong image he projects to the world, but as a man who feels, who remembers, who longs. When he thinks of you, it is not always through words or memories. Sometimes it's through sensations, the tone of your voice, the way light fell on your face, the comfort that your energy brought. These are not grand recollections, they are subtle vibrations that arise in his stillness, reminding him that connection is not a thought, it is a resonance. When a man is truly attached, the stillness after you leave becomes unbearable and enlightening at the same time. He may find himself restless, yet unable to move. He may occupy himself with work, with people, with noise, but silence follows him. In the quiet moments between distractions, your presence returns, not as a person, but as a feeling that lingers in his spirit. That is when he realizes that attachment is not held in possession, but in presence. Stillness teaches him patience. He begins to sense that reaching out too soon or too impulsively will not fill the void. So he learns to sit with the ache, to listen to it. He becomes more aware of how much of himself was tied to what you shared. He remembers how you laughed when he was serious, how you looked at him when he pretended not to care, how your calm presence softened the noise within him. These moments come back to him slowly, gently, without demand, like waves returning to the shore after a long journey. There is a sacred kind of silence between two souls who have shared genuine connection. Even when no words are exchanged, energy still moves between them. When he misses you deeply, he begins to feel that connection vibrating in subtle ways, in his dreams, in sudden thoughts, in moments of stillness that seem to pull him inward. He may not understand it intellectually, but he feels it intuitively. The bond between two energies does not vanish with absence, it transforms into awareness. A man who misses you will often appear calm on the surface. He may seem unchanged, composed, unbothered. But stillness has layers. Beneath that outer calm, there is a storm of reflection. He replays moments, choices, silences. He wonders what he could have said differently, what he could have done more consciously. Yet he doesn't always express it, because words cannot hold the weight of realization. Instead, he carries it within him, quietly, letting time reveal what emotion alone cannot. Stillness for him becomes both punishment and purification. It punishes the ego that took you for granted, and it purifies the heart that now learns to value presence through absence. He begins to understand that connection is not about control, it is about resonance. Missing you becomes his meditation, his confrontation with himself. In the depth of that silence, he discovers parts of himself he never met before: vulnerability, tenderness, humility. Some men try to escape the stillness when they miss someone deeply. They move from one thing to another, searching for distractions. But no matter how far they go, the stillness follows, because it is not tied to you alone. It is tied to the awareness of what your energy awakened in them. They realize that it was not just you they missed, but the version of themselves that existed in your presence, more open, more alive, more seen. Stillness becomes a space of remembrance. Every time he pauses, every time the world goes quiet, your energy gently returns. It does not demand attention. It simply exists. It becomes a quiet presence behind his thoughts. It softens him, humbles him, teaches him to listen to what words never could. Through this stillness, he learns that missing someone is not weakness. It is awareness. Awareness that love was real, that connection was deep, that something in him shifted when you were near. When a man misses you, you will not always see it in action. You will feel it in the energy he carries. Slower, quieter, more introspective. You will sense it in the pauses between his words, in the messages he almost sends but deletes, in the way he revisits old conversations not to dwell, but to remember the vibration of what once was alive between you. Stillness reveals the truth he cannot hide, that attachment runs deeper than pride, that love moves even when unspoken, that silence itself has a voice when the heart is awake. When a man begins to miss you, distance becomes more than space, it becomes reflection. What once was shared between two people becomes divided by silence and absence. And in that emptiness, truth begins to echo. Distance does not only separate bodies, it separates illusions from reality. It reveals what was genuine, what was performed, what was taken for granted. It forces him to look into himself without distraction, and in that mirror of distance, he starts to see who he truly was when you were near, and who he becomes without your presence. At first, distance feels like something external. He believes it is simply the miles, the lack of messages, the quiet between conversations. But slowly, the outer distance begins to turn inward. He starts to feel space inside himself, a hollow he cannot fill with noise, work, or company. This is when reflection begins. Distance begins to whisper, what was she really to you? What did you hold? And what did you let slip away? He begins to confront the reality that what is missing is not just your presence, but the reflection of himself that only existed in your eyes. When two people connect deeply, they create a shared energy, a shared rhythm. Each becomes a mirror for the other's growth, emotions, and awareness. When that bond breaks or pauses, a man suddenly finds himself alone with his own reflection, without the mirror that once showed him who he was becoming. He begins to notice that certain parts of himself, his gentleness, his vulnerability, his quiet joy, are harder to access without the energy that once drew them out. Distance shows him not only what he misses in you, but what he misses in himself. In the stillness of absence, he becomes more aware of the imbalance between what he gave and what he held back. He begins to see how often he chose logic over emotion, defense over openness, silence over truth. The mirror of distance does not lie. It reflects the shape of his actions and the weight of his inaction. It reflects the things he said too sharply, the moments he turned away instead of toward, the walls he built when he should have opened his heart. Every man who misses deeply must eventually face this mirror, for it is the only way to understand the value of what was once within reach. Distance changes the way he remembers. In closeness, memory can be blurred by familiarity. But in absence, the mind sharpens every detail. He remembers your tone, your laughter, your patience. He remembers the quiet strength you carried when he was uncertain. He begins to realize that the little things he once dismissed were the very things that gave his days meaning. Distance has a way of magnifying the invisible. It makes him see the sacred in what once seemed ordinary. There is a moment in every man's journey where he begins to see that distance is not his enemy. It is his reflection. It shows him his emotional maturity, his patterns, his truth. Some men run from it, drowning in distractions, seeking quick replacements or temporary comfort. Others sit with it, allowing it to teach them. When he allows distance to become his mirror, he begins to evolve. He starts to understand that missing someone is not punishment, it is awareness. Awareness that he was connected to something real, something that touched him beyond surface desire. Distance also reveals the illusion of control. When he was close to you, he may have believed he could manage emotions, control outcomes, dictate timing. But distance humbles the ego. It reminds him that connection cannot be controlled or forced. It flows when two souls are aligned and withdraws when one forgets its value. He begins to see that love, like energy, moves beyond grasp and logic. What he misses is not a possession but a vibration, the feeling of being fully seen and silently understood. As time stretches, the mirror grows clearer. He sees the truth of his emotional world, how much of his affection was genuine and how much was guarded, how much of his attention was presence, and how much was habit. He begins to confront the patterns that made him hide tenderness behind strength, distance behind pride. He starts to realize that emotional absence while being physically present is a deeper form of distance, one that often leads to regret. The mirror does not soften the truth. It shows it as it is. There is a subtle transformation that happens through this process. As he continues to reflect, he begins to feel gratitude for what the distance teaches him. It strips him of his assumptions and brings him closer to awareness. He understands that connection cannot be measured by constant communication, but by energy that lingers even when silence dominates. He feels your absence as an energy that does not fade. It simply changes form, living quietly within his consciousness. Distance also teaches him humility. In closeness, the ego often speaks louder than the heart, but when he is far from you, the ego loses its ground. He cannot use pride to fill the silence. He cannot argue with what is no longer there. All that remains is reflection. And in that reflection, he begins to sense the true measure of what you meant. He realizes that missing you is not about possession or desire. It is about resonance. The way your energy matched his, the way your presence balanced him, the way your silence could speak louder than his words. Sometimes he tries to move on, to forget, to convince himself that distance is the end. But the mirror does not disappear. It follows him quietly, appearing in moments of stillness, in music, in memories, in dreams. It shows him that true connection does not dissolve. It evolves. It transforms from a shared reality into an inner awareness. The more he resists it, the more clearly it reflects back to him what he still needs to understand. In the end, distance becomes both his teacher and his reflection. It shows him who he was when he was with you and who he becomes when left with himself. It shows him that love is not proven in proximity but in perception. It shows him that to miss someone deeply is not a weakness but a sign of awakening. The heart remembering what the mind tried to forget. And as he stares into that mirror, he begins to see not only you but himself more clearly than ever before. When a man begins to miss you, his actions change before his awareness does. He moves without knowing why. His gestures, his choices, his sudden impulses, they begin to carry the quiet trace of your energy. He may not speak your name, he may not even consciously think of you, yet something inside him stirs in familiar directions. He revisits places where your presence once lingered. He scrolls through old conversations. He listens to songs he hasn't heard in months. These movements are not decisions, they are echoes. When the heart begins to miss, the body moves before the mind understands. There is a deep intelligence in emotion, one that exists beyond logic. A man can convince himself that he has moved on, that time has erased the connection, that he is fine. But the heart does not obey rational timelines. Energy remembers what the mind tries to forget, so he finds himself acting without purpose, drawn by invisible threads that lead him back to the memory of what once felt alive. He checks his phone at night for no reason, feels restless in familiar places, and finds meaning in small coincidences that remind him of you. This is how missing someone truly begins, not with realization but with movement. He may go out with friends, but laughter feels different. He may speak to others, but connection feels shallow. Something beneath the surface keeps whispering, asking questions he doesn't want to answer. Why does silence feel heavier now? Why do simple things remind him of you? Why does peace feel just out of reach? He moves to distract himself, but every motion becomes a reminder. The more he moves away, the more something pulls him inward. That is the paradox of missing someone. Movement becomes the mask of stillness. Action becomes the disguise of longing. The human heart is magnetic. When it attaches deeply, the energy it shares does not vanish when distance appears. It continues to circulate, to hum quietly in the background of consciousness. This is why he moves without knowing why, because the body follows the memory of resonance. He might find himself passing by the cafe where you once sat together, replaying a conversation in his mind, or scrolling through photos without meaning to. Each movement becomes a form of seeking, though he would never call it that. He tells himself it's just coincidence, but deep down, he feels the pull. Sometimes he dreams of you, not as you were in the past, but as a feeling, a tone, a softness, a vibration. He wakes up unsettled, unsure why emotion lingers in his chest. It isn't always love that he feels. Sometimes it's absence, sometimes regret, sometimes unspoken gratitude. But all of it points back to one truth. He misses the connection that once made him feel more present. Missing someone is rarely about wanting them back exactly as before. It is about missing the version of the self that existed in their presence. His movements are attempts to reconnect with that version, to find that energy again, even without knowing that this is what he seeks. Men often live in movement. They are taught to solve, to act, to move forward. But missing someone slows that rhythm. His movements begin to feel aimless, his actions less certain. He starts to notice the emptiness between tasks, the quiet after busy days. That is when unconscious movement begins, the kind that is driven not by desire, but by emotional current. He moves because he feels, but he doesn't yet understand what he feels. His heart begins to lead where his mind cannot yet follow. There is a moment when he catches himself doing something small. Maybe listening to a song you once loved, maybe rewatching a movie you mentioned, maybe pausing at the thought of you, and in that moment awareness flickers. He realizes that he is moving under influence, not of habit, but of attachment. Something within him resists that truth because missing someone is a kind of vulnerability. It strips away the illusion of control. Yet no matter how much he resists, the body knows. The body remembers warmth, laughter, energy exchange. It carries the imprint of your presence, and it moves in alignment with that memory. You might notice his movements even when he tries to hide them. He might start liking old posts, responding to things indirectly, appearing in places you frequent without clear reason. He might reach out and then retreat, caught between pride and longing. He might send a message he deletes before sending, or ask mutual friends about you casually, pretending it's nothing. But underneath every small gesture, there is an unspoken truth. His movements are confessions the ego cannot silence. There is a kind of spiritual rhythm in the way the heart pulls people back toward unresolved energy. Missing someone is not always about romance. It is about unfinished energy loops that seek closure or reconnection. The man who misses you moves through this rhythm unconsciously. His life continues, yet beneath it runs a quiet current of feeling that keeps redirecting him. He may think he's simply restless, but it is not restlessness. It is remembrance. Every time he moves towards something that reminds him of you, he is trying to align with the energy that once gave him emotional balance. He moves without knowing why, because love, when genuine, becomes a part of his energetic identity. When you are gone, the energy does not disappear, it shifts into motion. His body, his habits, his choices all become subtle expressions of that loss. He might throw himself into work not because he's ambitious, but because stillness hurts. He might stay busy not because he's fine, but because silence speaks too loudly. Movement becomes his coping, his language of avoidance, his silent way of reaching out without reaching out. And yet, even in his busiest moments, the undercurrent remains. The heart knows no distance, no logic, no time. The movements of a man missing someone are the traces of love's persistence, gentle, unconscious, and often invisible. He moves because something in him remembers what it felt like to be seen. He moves because energy once shared cannot be forgotten. He moves because the absence of your presence has become a compass, guiding him back to a truth he cannot yet name. He moves not because he chooses to, but because emotion moves through him, whispering of what was real, reminding him of what once made him feel alive. When a man misses you, you will feel it before he ever says it. Words may be absent, messages may remain unsent, and his expression may seem calm, but his energy begins to shift in quiet, undeniable ways. Energy never hides, even when pride does. It is the first language of the heart, one that speaks without sentences, one that travels through silence, one that reaches you even when distance tries to stand between. His energy begins to reveal the things his mind is not yet ready to admit, the emotions his voice cannot articulate, and the longing his ego still tries to suppress. A man's words can be guarded, logical, and carefully chosen, but energy cannot lie. When he misses you, his presence feels different, softer, slower, more open, even if he doesn't realize it. You will feel a tension around him that carries remembrance. It shows up in the way he looks at you, in how his breath subtly changes when you're near, in how his tone becomes gentler when your name is mentioned. Energy is not bound by expression, it radiates from the inner world. When he misses you, the energy around him becomes both restless and vulnerable, carrying the vibration of unfinished connection. You might notice it in small moments. The way he pauses before replying, The way his eyes hold you for a second longer, the way he listens even in silence, he doesn't have to say, "I miss you." His energy already does. It speaks through hesitation, through subtle warmth, through the invisible pull that seems to draw him toward you. You can feel it in the air between you, a current that hasn't faded, an invisible dialogue still unfolding without words. Energy is truth. It moves before thought, before logic, before defense. When a man misses you, the truth of his emotion leaks through his energy field. Even when he tries to stay composed, even when he wears confidence like armor, something in his presence feels different. You sense his heart reaching while his mind resists. His gestures become quieter but more meaningful. His laughter may sound the same but carries a different weight. The spaces between his words grow filled with what he does not say. His energy starts to tell a story of remembrance, of longing, of emotional unfinishedness. He may think he's hiding it well, but energy does not ask for permission to speak. It radiates through his body language, through his stillness, through the frequency of his gaze. The eyes, especially, are where energy becomes visible. When a man misses you, his eyes soften without him meaning to. They carry the duality of familiarity and distance. The look of someone remembering what once felt like home, even if that home no longer exists the same way. His energy lingers around you not because he chooses to project it, but because connection once shared cannot be erased from the energetic field. It remains alive in vibration. He might not know why he feels drawn to reach out or why your name passes through his thoughts in quiet hours. But the body recognizes energetic bonds before the mind catches up. The heart communicates through resonance, not reasoning. When he misses you, his energy becomes magnetic. It gravitates unconsciously toward the source that once brought alignment. You might feel him thinking of you without seeing him. You might sense his presence in dreams, in moments of solitude, in sudden emotions that seem to appear out of nowhere. This is the nature of energy. It transcends physical distance and continues to communicate even in silence. When he speaks, listen not to his words, but to the vibration behind them. The words may be casual, detached, or polite, but energy always carries the deeper truth. His tone might tremble slightly when he says your name. His laughter might hide a quiet nostalgia. Even his silence becomes expressive, because energy speaks in layers beyond the audible. When he misses you, his entire frequency shifts into something quieter, heavier, and more reflective. He may not understand why he feels unsettled or why certain moments suddenly remind him of you. Yet his energy already knows. It is speaking through every small reaction, through every wave of emotion that passes through him. True connection imprints on energy, not memory. You can forget details, you can forget words, but the feeling remains stored in the body's energetic field. When a man misses you, that field becomes active again. His body reacts to the remembrance of your energy. His heart beats differently. His emotions stir unexpectedly. His thoughts circle back to the same moments. He begins to feel your absence not as emptiness, but as presence that refuses to disappear. That is how energy speaks. It transforms missing into movement, silence into signal, distance into awareness. His energy might also become conflicted. He might act distant while feeling close. He might try to detach, but his energy keeps leaning forward. You will notice the dissonance. Words that say, "I'm fine," while energy says, "I remember." This is the silent struggle of someone caught between the ego's desire for control and the soul's desire for truth. The heart's energy always tells on us. It exposes what pride tries to protect. It whispers truths that even he has not fully accepted. The more genuine the connection was, the louder his energy becomes in your absence. You may feel it as a pull, a thought, a sudden emotion that feels like him. That's because energy, unlike emotion, is not bound by linear time. It lingers, expands, and continues to communicate. When he misses you, the air between you changes. Even without contact, you sense the frequency shift, a quiet vibration of awareness that passes between two souls that once shared alignment. When you meet again, you feel it instantly. His words may be polite, ordinary, rehearsed, but his energy exposes him. The way he stands, the calmness that fades when you look into his eyes, the breath he takes before speaking, all of it becomes language. Energy carries memory, and memory becomes vibration. That vibration cannot pretend. It tells you that even if time has passed and distance has expanded, something inside him still remembers the resonance. His body, his silence, his gaze. They all become messages that the mouth cannot form. He may never confess it directly, but you will always know, because his energy speaks long before his words ever could. It speaks through stillness, through timing, through the invisible connection that continues to move between two energies that once met deeply. It speaks in every hesitation, in every glance, in every quiet moment where something unspoken lingers. It speaks the truth that words often hide, that the heart, even when silent, never truly forgets. When a man misses you, there is often a quiet war inside him, a war between what he feels and what he allows himself to show. The heart reaches out softly, wanting to reconnect, wanting to express, wanting to surrender. But the ego stands in the way, guarding the gates with pride and logic. It tells him to stay silent, to appear unaffected, to move on as if nothing has shifted. Yet deep within, the heart continues to wait patiently, tenderly, without judgment. This struggle between ego and heart becomes the hidden story behind his silence, a story of resistance and longing unfolding beneath his calm exterior. Ego is the armor that men are taught to wear. From a young age, they learn to associate vulnerability with weakness, emotion with loss of control. When he misses you, this conditioning comes to the surface. His ego whispers that reaching out would make him look small, that expressing longing would make him appear dependent. So he resists the pull. He distracts himself with routine, with logic, with noise. But even as he does, the heart continues to send signals, gentle reminders that something essential is missing. He can suppress emotion, but he cannot silence energy. The struggle between the two becomes an invisible battle within his being. His heart remembers moments his ego wants to erase. It remembers the warmth of your laughter, the safety of your presence, the peace that existed beyond words. The heart operates from truth, and truth cannot be negotiated. But ego thrives on appearances. It wants control, it wants certainty, it wants victory. So the man who misses you finds himself pulled in opposite directions. One part wanting to reach toward you, another part refusing to bend. This inner conflict often shows up as inconsistency. He might appear detached one day and quietly present the next, torn between emotional honesty and self-protection. When he sits alone in silence, the struggle grows louder. The ego speaks first, convincing him he did the right thing. That distance is strength, that time will dissolve what he feels. But the heart waits behind that noise, patient and unhurried. It does not argue, it only feels. And in the still moments between distractions, the truth begins to rise again. The memory of your presence, the energy of what was shared, the ache of what remains unresolved. He feels it in small waves. A heaviness in the chest, a thought that won't leave, a sudden emotion he cannot explain. The ego calls it weakness, the heart calls it remembrance. Ego wants to protect the image, the heart wants to protect the connection. The man who misses you is caught between these two forces, both claiming to be right. His ego builds walls, creating a story that keeps him safe. If she's fine without me, it doesn't matter anymore, I'm better off alone. These are not truths, they are shields. But even as he repeats them, the heart knows otherwise. The heart is timeless, it does not measure worth in winning or losing. It simply waits, holding the space for love even when love is unspoken. You can often sense this battle in his silence. He may not reach out, but you feel his hesitation. He may not say your name, but you feel the pull of his energy. When you appear in his thoughts, the ego immediately interrupts, telling him to move on. But the heart stays still, gently holding your image. This is why he sometimes seems distant yet energetically present. His ego struggles to erase what his heart continues to honor. Missing someone becomes a quiet test of self-awareness, a spiritual conflict between defense and truth. There are moments when his ego almost wins. He convinces himself that emotion is futile, that vulnerability leads to pain. He distracts himself with work, ambition, people, noise. For a while it works. The surface becomes calm, the noise grows louder. But at night, when the world quiets, the heart speaks again. It whispers through dreams, through sensations, through subtle energy. It reminds him of connection, of softness, of something he can neither name nor replace. This is when he feels restless, not because he is uncertain, but because the heart refuses to let illusion win. The heart does not chase, it waits. It does not demand, it observes. It carries patience born from truth. While the ego struggles to maintain appearances, the heart waits for alignment, for the moment when he can lower the armor and admit what he feels. Missing someone is not just emotional, it is spiritual. It breaks down layers of self-image, revealing the rawness beneath. Every man who truly misses someone must walk through this tension between wanting to control emotion and needing to feel it fully. The ego resists, the heart endures. You might notice how he moves differently in this phase. His words may be shorter, but his silence is louder. His posture may appear steady, but his energy feels conflicted. You may see him act indifferent, yet his gaze tells a different story. This is the language of inner struggle. The outer calm concealing the storm inside. The ego may pretend not to care, but the body gives it away, the long pauses, the unconscious glances, the sudden quiet when your name is mentioned. The heart speaks through what the ego tries to suppress. Over time, the struggle becomes transformative. The ego begins to tire of the constant defense. It starts to soften, realizing that control does not bring peace. Slowly, the heart's patience begins to shape him. He learns that missing someone does not make him weak, it makes him real. He begins to understand that vulnerability is not loss of power, it is awareness. The heart waits not because it is passive, but because it trusts timing more than impulse. And when his ego finally lowers its guard, even for a moment, he feels what he has been running from. The truth that connection never truly leaves, it simply changes form. He may never express it in words, but you will feel it in his energy. That quiet war, that silent longing, that push and pull between fear and truth. His ego struggles to maintain control, but his heart continues to wait with quiet dignity. It waits for understanding, for courage, for peace. It waits not for the return of the past, but for the return of honesty within him. It waits because it knows that real connection does not demand attention, it only asks to be felt. And no matter how long the ego resists, the heart, patient, unwavering, timeless, never stops waiting. When a man truly misses you, something inside him shifts. The version of him that left, the version that once took presence for granted, cannot be the same one who returns. Time, distance, and silence become his teachers. They humble his ego, soften his edges, and awaken a deeper understanding of what connection really means. Missing you becomes more than longing, it becomes transformation. Through absence, he learns what presence was worth. Through solitude, he learns what togetherness truly meant. And when he finally returns, he does not come seeking the same story. He comes carrying awareness he didn't have before. Missing someone deeply is not an emotional event. It's a spiritual unfolding. It forces a man to meet himself in the emptiness left behind. When you are gone, the noise of daily life begins to quiet, and he starts hearing things he once ignored. The echo of your laughter, the silence of your absence, the calm he felt in your presence. At first, he resists it. He tells himself it's just nostalgia, just a temporary feeling. But the heart knows better. It keeps reminding him that certain energies are not easily replaced, that certain connections mark the soul in ways that time cannot erase. He begins to feel the contrast between what was real and what was superficial. Other conversations feel hollow, other company feels temporary, other connections fail to hold the same depth. That is how he starts to awaken, not through grand realizations, but through the subtle ache of comparison. Missing you teaches him clarity. He begins to understand that love is not excitement, but consistency, not attachment, but presence, not words, but energy. It's only when you are gone that he truly starts to see what your energy gave him. Balance, grounding, peace. Men often learn through silence. While women process emotion through expression, men process it through withdrawal. When he misses you, he withdraws into reflection. Even if he doesn't mean to, he starts to replay moments not out of regret, but to understand. What did he overlook? What did he fail to appreciate? What truth did he ignore while chasing distraction? This reflection becomes his quiet evolution. He begins to see how his actions or his silence built the distance. He begins to realize that missing someone is not weakness, it's awareness. The awareness that love is not guaranteed, that presence is not endless, that moments disappear when consciousness is absent. During this time, his pride begins to loosen its grip. The ego that once told him he was fine now begins to whisper softer truths, that maybe he wasn't ready, that maybe he closed off too soon, that maybe he mistook emotional protection for strength. Missing you breaks the illusion of control. It teaches him that emotions cannot be managed, only felt, and when he allows himself to feel, he begins to change. The man who once ran from vulnerability starts to understand its depth. The one who once avoided emotion starts to see that suppression only deepens the longing. This is where transformation begins, in the acceptance of feeling. He starts to return long before he physically does. The return begins energetically, in the thoughts he sends your way, in the emotions that resurface, in the quiet moments when he wishes you could hear what he can't yet say. His heart starts to move before his steps do. It's as if the universe begins to guide him back through synchronicities, through memories, through random reminders that carry your energy. When a man truly misses you, he becomes aware of how connected everything is, how energy keeps looping back to the source of truth. By the time he returns, he is not the same man who left. He comes with humility. His energy feels slower, more grounded, more sincere. The impulsiveness fades, replaced by awareness. He listens more than he speaks. He looks at you not to admire, but to understand. There is less ego, more presence. His eyes hold the story of what he learned in silence. The loneliness that taught him gratitude, the absence that taught him reverence. He no longer comes to prove himself. He comes to share what he has become. When a man truly misses you, he begins to value connection in ways he didn't before. He no longer confuses attention with care or comfort with love. He realizes that love is not something to possess, but something to honor. The return of a man who has truly missed you is quiet. It's not about grand gestures or loud confessions. It's about energy. The energy of recognition, of awareness, of sincerity. You feel it in the way he shows up, in the steadiness of his gaze, in the absence of pretense. His presence speaks louder than any apology could. The heart that misses deeply becomes more conscious. Missing you teaches him patience. The patience to understand timing. The patience to rebuild trust. The patience to move with care instead of impulse. It teaches him the value of emotional responsibility. He starts to see that love cannot thrive in distraction. That connection needs awareness to survive. He becomes more deliberate with his energy, more mindful with his words. His return is not about recreating the past. It's about honoring what was lost and nurturing what still remains. And though he may never say it outright, you can feel the difference. The way he stands, the way he breathes, the way he looks at you, all of it carries depth. There's a quiet remorse in him, but also gratitude. He's learned that missing someone is not about needing them to fill emptiness. It's about realizing how rare it is to meet someone whose presence feels like home. His return carries that awareness, not the excitement of possession, but the peace of recognition. He returns differently because he understands differently. He understands that closeness is not guaranteed, that love is fragile when taken for granted, and that connection, once lost, cannot simply be replaced. He understands that time does not heal without humility, that absence does not erase emotion, and that missing someone is sometimes the only way to remember their true worth. When he truly misses you, he doesn't come back to relive the past. He comes back to honor the lesson, the growth and the love that transformed him in his absence.